I want you to close your eyes for a second.
Okay, I'm with you.
And just imagine the ultimate time machine sports scenario. Picture this. What happens when the greatest, most legendary NFL teams from the 1980s and the 1990s are just ripped right out of their respective eras,
Oh, man.
right? And they're thrown into a single massive golden era league, forced to battle it out on the gridiron week after grueling week.
It's the ultimate what if.
Exactly. I mean, imagine the pure, unbridled passing spectacle of the early 80s colliding head-on with the sophisticated, hard-hitting defensive schemes of the late 90s.
And those physical bruising running games, too.
Yes, those two. So welcome to the deep dive. We have gotten our hands on a massive, absolutely fascinating data packet.
It really is something else.
It contains the box scores, the divisional standings, and the statistical league leaders up through Week 10 of a simulated historical Super League, spanning iconic teams from 1980 all the way up to 1999.
It is an incredible data set to unpack. When you look at these rosters, you are looking at the absolute peak of professional football evolution across two defining decades.
The best of the best.
Right. We aren't just comparing stats in a vacuum here. We are seeing how fundamentally differing football philosophies stack up when forced to share the exact same field.
Which is wild to think about.
You are taking defensive coordinators who built their entire careers stopping traditional I-formation running attacks, and you are suddenly forcing them to defend the spread passing concepts of the late 90s. It really tests the limits of historical greatness.
Right off the bat, though, I have to ask you, when you throw eras together, like, doesn't modern nutrition and training and scheme evolution give the late 90s teams an automatic unfair advantage?
Well, that's the assumption, right?
Yeah, I mean, or does the data show something different? That is what we are here to figure out today.
Exactly.
The mission for this deep dive is to break down the wild, unpredictable results from the Week 10 games. We'll analyze the current playoff race by looking closely at the divisional standings and marvel at the statistical freaks leading this league.
And there are quite a few of them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And finally, based strictly on the data we have in front of us, we're going to make some bold playoff predictions. So if you're a football fan or even just someone who loves a good analytical puzzle, settle in.
The premise that newer is always better is exactly what this simulation is challenging. Week 10 provided some of the most compelling answers to those hypothetical matchups we've seen so far.
It really did.
The clashes in style are producing results that force you to completely rethink the conventional wisdom of how the game is played and won. We are seeing tactical paradigms shift right in front of our eyes.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
We have to start with the marquee matchup of Week 10.
Oh, yeah, we do.
It was the ultimate mentor versus mentee battle, a total clash of generational quarterback royalty. We had the 1984 Miami Dolphins, led by a prime Dan Marino,
Historic season.
going up against the 1999 Indianapolis Colts, led by young Peyton Manning.
Two of the greatest to ever do it.
Right. And coming into this, the hype was all about a shootout. You have two of the most prolific passers in the history of the sport.
You expect fireworks.
But the 84 Dolphins completely ran away with it. They dismantled the Colts 31-9. I have to admit, I was shocked by how lopsided this was.
A lot of people were.
How does a 90s defense featuring that kind of team speed get completely shredded by a quarterback from 15 years prior?
Well, it comes down to the fundamental design of the 1999 Colts defense and how perfectly Dan Marino was built to destroy it.
Tell me more about that.
The late 90s Colts utilized a defensive scheme built around speed, undersized linebackers, and a heavy reliance on zone coverage.
Like the Tampa 2 style stuff.
Exactly. Their entire philosophy was to read the quarterback's eyes, jump passing lanes, and rely on their defensive line to get pressure without blitzing.
Just using the front four.
Right. But the box score for this game is a masterclass in offensive execution by a veteran quarterback who simply refused to play their game.
He just ignored their trap.
Completely. Dan Marino completed 24 of his 35 passing attempts for a staggering 388 yards, 4 touchdowns, and just 1 interception.
But didn't the Colts have elite pass rushers? Like, how did Marino stay upright long enough to throw for nearly 400 yards?
That is the genius of 1984 Dan Marino. He possessed arguably the quickest throwing release in the history of the sport.
Just a total flick of the wrist.
Yeah, the Colts pass rush simply couldn't get home in time. Marino was diagnosing the zone coverages before the snap, taking the snap and firing the ball into the seams of the zone before the Colts linebackers could even drop into their assigned areas.
Wow, so he beat them before the play even really started.
Exactly. When you break down how that game flowed, Miami scored in every single quarter.
Yeah.
7 in the first, 10 in the second, 7 in the third, and 7 in the fourth.
It was just a relentless methodical beating.
And what's fascinating here is how Marino utilized his specific weapons. Mark Clayton had a monster game.
Oh, I saw that line.
He caught 7 passes for 126 yards and 2 of those 4 Marino touchdowns. Clayton wasn't just running past people, he was finding the soft spots in the Colt zone, turning around, and the ball was already arriving.
So it's essentially a schematic mismatch.
Precisely.
The Colts are designed to bait quarterbacks into making mistakes, but Marino's processor is just too fast to be baited.
He processes information instantly.
Meanwhile, you look at Peyton Manning's numbers on the other side of this game, and it tells a completely different story.
A much sadder story for Colts fans.
Yeah, Manning threw for 238 yards, completing 22 of 36 passes. That's a 61% completion rate,
Okay.
which isn't terrible, but he couldn't find the end zone once.
Not a single time.
0 passing touchdowns for the 99 Colts. They had to settle for 3 field goals, scoring all 9 of their points in the second and third quarters, and were completely shut out in the first and fourth.
It was a very quiet day for them.
Why did the Colts offense stall out so badly when they have players like Edgerrin James and Marvin Harrison?
Well, the 84 Dolphins defense recognized that the 99 Colts offense relies heavily on a stretch run scheme.
Okay, for those who might not know, break down the stretch run.
The stretch run is designed to make the offensive linemen move laterally, forcing the defense to run sideways,
Right.
which eventually creates a cutback lane for the running back. Edgerrin James is brilliant at this.
One of the best.
But the Dolphins' defensive front from the early 80s was significantly heavier and designed to anchor against the run rather than chase it laterally.
So they just planted their feet.
They completely clogged the interior. James ground out 65 yards on 16 carries, but it was incredibly tough sledding.
So no big explosive runs.
Because the Colts couldn't establish that dominant ground game to dictate the tempo, Manning was forced into obvious passing downs.
And when you were in obvious passing downs, the defense pins its ears back.
Exactly. The field shrunk in the red zone, and the Dolphins were able to drop extra defenders into coverage.
Which is a nightmare for a young quarterback.
The Colts, despite James catching 7 passes for another 94 yards out of the backfield, kept stalling when they got inside the 20-yard line.
Manning was basically outgunned by the veteran.
He really was. Marino's ability to drive the ball down the field, combined with players like Woody Bennett chipping in with 52 yards rushing to keep the Colts defense honest, completely neutralized Indianapolis.
It's a massive statement win for the 84 Dolphins, proving their early 80s vertical passing attack is highly lethal against late 90s zone defenses.
A definite clash of eras won by the 80s.
But if we want to talk about bizarre box scores that defy all football logic, we have to talk about the 1998 Denver Broncos taking down the 1981 San Diego Chargers 31-22.
This game was wild.
Now, on the surface, a 2-score win for the defending 98 Super Bowl champs isn't crazy. But the way it happened, my jaw dropped.
It doesn't make sense at first glance.
The 81 Chargers were putting on an absolute air raid, yet they still lost convincingly. I need you to explain this to me, because looking at these numbers, it feels like the Chargers should have won by a landslide.
I completely understand the confusion, because what's fascinating here is that the MVP of this game was actually awarded to a player on the losing team.
Wait, really?
Yes. Dan Fouts, the quarterback for the 81 Chargers, threw for a mind-boggling 440 yards and 3 touchdowns on 31 of 54 passing.
440 yards.
He earned the Week 10 MVP award despite losing the game by 9 points. This game perfectly encapsulates the Air Coryell offense of the early 80s.
Let's pause there because we hear that term a lot. What exactly is the Air Coryell offense, and why does it produce these massive yardage totals without necessarily guaranteeing a win?
Dan Coryell, the head coach of those Chargers teams, revolutionized the passing game. The Air Coryell system is built on vertical stretching.
Okay, so going deep.
Instead of running short, safe, high-percentage horizontal routes, the receivers run deep numbered routes designed to stretch the defense to its absolute breaking point down the field.
Just putting maximum pressure on the safeties.
Exactly. It requires a quarterback with incredible anticipation and a massive arm, which Fouts had. It racks up historic yardage between the 20-yard lines because defenders are constantly retreating.
Okay, so Fouts is just chucking it deep. And his tight end, Kellen Winslow, ends up catching 10 passes for 166 yards. The yardage is staggering.
It looks like a video game.
It's like owning a restaurant with a line out the door, but your cash register is completely broken. How do you compile those stats and still lose by 2 scores to the Broncos?
It comes down to the brutal balance deficiency of the 1998 Denver Broncos. You have to look at the contrasting philosophies.
Okay, lay it out for us.
While Fouts was throwing the ball 54 times and playing a high-variance, high-risk game, John Elway was methodically dismantling the Chargers' secondary with terrifying precision.
Quality over quantity.
Elway only threw the ball 25 times, completing 17 of them for 311 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Wait, 17 completions for over 300 yards.
That is an incredible yards per completion metric. But the real engine of that 98 Denver team, and the reason they controlled the game, is their zone-blocking rushing attack led by Terrell Davis.
Right, the famous Denver zone blocking scheme. How did that specifically counter what the Chargers were doing?
The Chargers of the early 80s were built to rush the passer. Their defensive linemen were aggressive up-the-field penetrators.
Just trying to get to the quarterback as fast as possible.
Denver's offensive line used that against them. In a zone-blocking scheme, the offensive linemen move in unison to one side, flowing like a river.
Just washing the defensive line away.
They let those aggressive defensive linemen penetrate, but simply push them past the play. Terrell Davis then reads the flow of the blocks, finds the crease, plants his foot, and explodes upfield.
And he's so good at that one cut.
Davis ground out 96 yards and a touchdown on 21 carries. This controlled the clock, kept Fats on the sideline for long stretches, and dictated the physical tempo of the game.
So it's death by 1,000 cuts versus swinging for the fences every play.
Precisely. And when the Chargers finally committed extra defenders to the box to stop Terrell Davis, Elway made them pay dearly.
Play action deep ball.
He found Ed McCaffrey, who went absolutely nuclear with 7 catches for 191 yards and a touchdown.
Nearly 200 yards on 7 catches.
Denver jumped out to a 17-3 halftime lead, extended it to an insurmountable 31-9 by the end of the third quarter, and basically let the Chargers compile garbage time stats in the fourth quarter when San Diego scored 13 unanswered points.
So that 440 yards is a bit of a mirage.
The box score looks close in yardage, but Denver dictated the terms of engagement from the opening whistle.
Speaking of dictating terms, sometimes the defenses in this Golden Era League dictate terms so harshly that the games turn into something out of the 1920s.
Oh, you're talking about the kicker games.
Yes. We had some incredibly high-powered offenses completely stall out in Week 10, turning into bizarre, grinding kicker battles.
You have to laugh.
Because you have all these Hall of Fame quarterbacks, legendary running backs, and revolutionary offensive coordinators on the field. And it's the guys with the single-bar face masks kicking field goals who walk away with the MVP hardware.
It is pretty ironic.
Does that even happen?
It happens because when you take elite defenses from different eras and pit them against offenses that aren't equipped to counter their specific pressure packages, the field position battle becomes the entire game.
It's just punts and field goals.
We saw this in 3 distinct matchups this week. Let's look at the first one. The 1985 Chicago Bears falling to the 1980 Philadelphia Eagles 24-15.
Okay, the 85 Bears defense is universally considered one of the greatest ever assembled. They ran the 46 defense right.
The Buddy Ryan special.
A scheme that essentially put 8 men in the box, dared you to pass, and overwhelmed the offensive line with sheer numbers and aggression.
Pure chaos.
But the Bears lost. If their defense is so legendary, why did they drop this game to the 80 Eagles?
Because the Bears' offense was completely anemic in this simulation. The 80 Eagles' defense was stout, fundamentally sound, and designed to stop the run.
Which was the Bears' whole identity.
Right. Steve Fuller was forced into action at quarterback for the Bears and was completely out of his depth against a disciplined secondary.
How bad was it?
He threw for just 63 yards on 5 of 19 passing.
63 yards for the whole game. Ouch!
And Walter Payton, arguably the greatest running back of his generation, was held to just 30 rushing yards on 9 carries.
That's unbelievable.
The Eagles simply stacked the line of scrimmage, knowing Fuller couldn't beat them through the air. The Bears' only points came from 5 field goals by kicker Kevin Butler.
Right, 5 field goals.
He scored all 15 points for Chicago and was actually named the MVP of the game for his team despite the loss.
That's amazing.
The 80 Eagles capitalized on the Bears' offensive futility, with Ron Jaworski managing the game effectively and throwing 2 touchdowns to secure the win.
5 field goals, accounting for the entire offense. But it gets weirder because the Bears are known for defense. What about the 1995 Dallas Cowboys?
Another crazy one.
They edged out the 1985 New York Jets 18-14. This is the 95 Cowboys we are talking about. Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, the triplets.
One of the best offensive trios ever.
This team was an offensive juggernaut in their era. And yet Aikman threw for just 138 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception.
Very pedestrian numbers.
And Emmitt Smith was completely bottles up for 55 yards on 19 carries. So who was the hero? Cowboys kicker Chris Bonial took home MVP honors.
Another kicker.
He kicked enough field goals to squeak out an 18-14 victory in a game where the Jets actually led 14-6 at halftime. What defensive wizardry did the 85 Jets pull off to silence the Cowboys?
The 85 Jets were known as the New York Sack Exchange for a reason. They had an incredibly disruptive defensive line that could generate pressure using only 4 rushers.
Ah, so they didn't even need to blitz.
Exactly. When you can rush 4 and drop 7 men into coverage, you take away the quick passing lanes that Troy Aikman relies on to feed Michael Irvin.
That makes sense.
Furthermore, their front 4 was stout enough to consistently win their matchups against the Cowboys' vaunted offensive line, blowing up Emmitt Smith's rushing lanes before he could get downhill.
That Cowboys offensive line was massive, too.
But the Jets matched their physicality. The Jets' own offense wasn't much better, though. Ken O'Brien threw for only 116 yards, and their star runner Freeman McNeil managed just 53 yards.
So nobody can move the ball.
It devolved into a trench war, a defensive slugfest, where special teams became the sole differentiator.
That is wild. It really goes to show that a great pass rush translates across any decade.
It's the great equalizer.
And we saw the exact same phenomenon when the 1984 San Francisco 49ers squeaked by the 1996 Carolina Panthers 18-17.
Yes.
You would expect a prime Joe Montana running Bill Walsh's revolutionary West Coast offense to completely light up a second-year expansion franchise like the 96 Panthers.
On paper, it looks like a mismatch.
But the Panthers' defense played out of their minds. Montana threw 2 interceptions in that game. He completed 23 passes for 233 yards, but just couldn't get the offense rolling into the end zone consistently.
Well, the 96 Panthers defense was heavily reliant on exotic zone blitzes.
Explain that for us.
It's a concept developed in the 90s where defensive linemen drop back into pass coverage while linebackers or defensive backs blitz from unexpected angles.
So a defensive tackle might be covering a running back.
Yes! It is designed to confuse the quarterback's blocking assignments and disrupt his timing. For a rhythm-based system like the West Coast offense, which relies on the quarterback throwing to a specific spot at a specific time, the zone blitz creates absolute chaos.
It totally short-circuits the play.
Montana was seeing defenders in passing lanes where they historically shouldn't be.
The 49ers were actually losing 14-6 at the half, and were still down 14-6 going into the fourth quarter. It looked like an incredible upset was brewing.
It really did. Carolina's Kerry Collins only managed 141 passing yards. But the Panthers' defense, anchored by players like Sam Mills and Kevin Green, kept them right in it.
So how did the 49ers pull it out?
Because Montana couldn't execute in the red zone due to the constricted space and complex blitzes, the 49ers had to rely entirely on their kicker, Ray Wersching.
Let me guess he had a big day.
He hit a barrage of field goals in the fourth quarter to pull off a 12-point final frame, securing the 18-17 comeback win.
Unbelievable.
Wersching, a kicker, taking home the game MVP award over Joe Montana Taylor, Jerry Rice, and Roger Craig is stunning.
It really highlights how, in a super league packed with elite talent across the board, the margins between winning and losing are razor thin.
Very true. When offensive schemes are neutralized by defensive evolution, a reliable leg becomes your most valuable asset.
It's a sobering reminder that all the offensive firepower in the world doesn't matter if you can't punch it in from the 10-yard line.
You have to finish drive.
But not every game was a nail-biter decided by special teams. We had some absolute blowouts in Week 10 that we need to examine.
Let's hear them.
Let's talk about the 1996 Green Bay Packers obliterating the 1991 Detroit Lions 38-14. Brett Favre was a surgeon in this one.
He was carving them up.
He went 22 of 30 for 266 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Packers were actually down 7-0 after the first quarter, but then they dropped 7 in the second, a massive 21 points in the third, and 10 in the fourth. It was a complete avalanche.
The avalanche was inevitable because of the structural flaws of that 1991 Detroit Lions team. And we really have to address the tragic reality of those Lions.
It's tough to look at.
With that loss, they have fallen to an abysmal 0-10 on this season.
0-10.
In this specific game, Eric Kramer was completely ineffective at quarterback, going 5 for 20 for 112 yards and throwing 2 interceptions. The Lions' offense in this era was essentially one-dimensional.
And in a league of historical heavyweights, one dimension gets you entirely erased. It's like having a Ferrari. but you're permanently stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic. You can hear the engine purring. The power is there, but you aren't going anywhere. Because the real tragedy here is Barry Sanders, isn't it?
Yes, Barry Sanders is trapped on a roster that simply cannot compete in this simulation. Sanders had 20 carries for 54 yards and 2 touchdowns in this game.
He's trying so hard.
He is valiantly trying to keep his team afloat, bouncing runs outside, breaking tackles behind the line of scrimmage, just trying to manufacture offense by himself.
But the defense knows he's the only threat.
But when your quarterback completes 25% of his passes, modern defensive coordinators do something they rarely did back in the early 90s. They play cover zero.
Break down cover zero for me, because that sounds like a death sentence for a running back.
It essentially is. Cover zero means there are 0 safeties playing deep zone coverage. Every eligible receiver is covered man-to-man.
Leaving no help over the top.
And every other defensive player, often 8 or 9 massive bodies, is crowded right onto the line of scrimmage. They are daring Eric Kramer to beat them deep, knowing he can't.
Which physically removes all the running gaps.
Sanders has nowhere to escape. Meanwhile, the 96 Packers showed the ultimate balanced offense. Favre passing to Antonio Freeman, who had 91 yards and 2 TDs, while Edgar Bennett rushed for 115 yards against a demoralized Lions defense.
It was a mismatch of historic proportions. The physical toll of playing a complete balanced team has to be exhausting for these one-dimensional squads.
It wears you down mentally and physically.
And speaking of physical tolls, the 1999 Tennessee Titans absolutely smashed the 1988 Cincinnati Bengals 42-21.
That was a bruising game.
Steve McNair was solid, throwing for 232 yards and 2 TDs. But looking at the tape, this game was entirely driven by the sheer brute force of Eddie George.
He was a tank out there.
I'm looking at his stat line and trying to imagine what it was like for those 88 Bengals linebackers to try and tackle him in the fourth quarter.
It had to be a nightmare. Eddie George was relentless. He carried the ball 20 times for 71 yards. The yardage average isn't spectacular, but more importantly, he punched in 3 rushing touchdowns.
3 touchdowns, just pounding it in at the goal line.
The 99 Titans are built on a philosophy of physical dominance at the point of attack. They run power blocking schemes utilizing fullbacks and pulling guards to create massive collisions at the line of scrimmage.
Real old school smash mouth football.
An early 80s defense like the Bengals was generally built lighter and faster to combat the passing and sweeping running styles of their era. They simply wore down under the cumulative effect of a 240-pound running back hitting them play after play.
So the Titans essentially just leaned on them until they broke.
Basically, yes.
Boomer Esiason threw for 229 yards and 2 touchdowns for Cincinnati. So they had some offensive success, but they could not stop the Titans in the red zone.
Tennessee put up 14 points in the third quarter and another 14 in the fourth to pull away completely. It's a textbook example of late 90s power football overriding 80s finesse.
Exactly. Now, rounding out the Week 10 slate, we had some incredibly tight finishes and genuine upsets that challenge these very same narratives.
Let's look at the Rams game.
Yes, the 1999 St. Louis Rams, surviving the 1991 New Orleans Saints 20-19. The 91 Saints defense, famous for their linebacker core, known as the Dome Patrol, threw everything they had at the Rams' greatest show on turf.
A classic immovable object versus unstoppable force.
Wait, let's set the stage here for you listening. The greatest show on turf is the 99 Rams offense, which used pre-snap motion multiple wide receiver sets and Marshall Faulk out of the backfield to create utter chaos, right?
Right. High speed, high scoring.
And the Dome Patrol is the Saints linebackers. Ricky Jackson, Vaughn Johnson, Sam Mills, and Pat Swilling, arguably the greatest quartet of linebackers ever. How did these two completely opposite forces collide?
It was a tactical chess match, and the Saints nearly succeeded in pulling off the upset. The Saints actually held the explosive Rams offense to just 20 points, which is a massive victory for that defense.
That's a huge win for them defensively.
The Dome Patrol disrupted the timing of the Rams' crossing routes. They physically rerouted receivers at the line of scrimmage and used their incredible sideline-to-sideline speed to close down the passing windows that Kurt Warner usually exploits.
And on the other side of the ball,
Steve Walsh threw for 254 yards and a touchdown for New Orleans, matching the Rams blow for blow and keeping the time of possession relatively even.
So if the Saints executed their defensive game plan so well, how did the Rams escape with a one-point victory?
Because the Rams' offensive system is designed to eventually find the single weakest link in coverage, Kurt Warner ultimately took the MVP honors, throwing for 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception.
He just kept plugging away.
He remained patient. When the linebackers took away the middle of the field, Warner went outside to Isaac Bruce.
The perimeter was open.
Bruce was his primary outlet, going for 110 yards and a touchdown on 7 catches. It was a 2019 nail-biter where the Rams' ability to execute a high-wire passing attack under immense physical pressure from a legendary linebacking core proved just barely enough to secure the win.
So the Rams survived, but the Saints provided the rest of the league with a blueprint on how to slow them down.
A blueprint that I'm sure other coaches in this simulation are feverishly copying.
And speaking of blueprints, I think the 1999 Jacksonville Jaguars just handed the rest of the league a blueprint on how to dismantle the 1986 Cleveland Browns.
This was a shocker.
This was perhaps the most shocking result of the week. Jacksonville completely shellacking Cleveland 37-14. I mean, I have to push back on what we thought we knew about the AFC Central, because the 86 Browns came into this game looking like true heavyweight contenders.
And the sub-500 Jaguars just ran them out of the building. What went wrong for Cleveland?
We'll break it down for us.
This was a brilliant exhibition of exploiting specific schematic matchups. The 99 Jaguars were struggling coming into this game, sitting with a losing record.
Right.
But they recognized that the 86 Browns secondary played a heavy amount of man-to-man coverage that left them vulnerable to complex stacked route combinations.
So receivers crossing each other, creating traffic.
Mark Brunell, the Jaguars quarterback, put the team on his back. He threw for 284 yards and 2 touchdowns, navigating the pocket beautifully.
And his primary target.
Jimmy Smith was utterly unstoppable against man coverage. Smith racked up 133 receiving yards on 7 catches, constantly shaking his defender at the top of his routes. They completely overrode Bernie Kosar's Browns.
Kosar threw for 251 yards and a touchdown, which looks okay on paper, but he was forced into 2 costly interceptions. It seems like the Jaguars' defense, which hadn't looked great earlier in the season, suddenly woke up.
They did. They recognized that the Browns lacked a dynamic rushing attack to punish them, so the Jaguars dropped into heavy zone coverages, confusing Kosar and forcing him to hold on to the ball just a fraction of a second too long.
Just long enough for the pass rush to get there or force a bad throw.
The Jaguars pitched a shutout in the first 3 quarters while their offense built an insurmountable 37-0 lead. The 14 points Cleveland scored all came in the 4th quarter when the game was already decided, and Jacksonville was playing soft prevent defense.
Wow, this result completely shakes up the balance of power in the AFC Central Division.
It really does.
That stunning upset by the Jaguars completely upends what we thought we knew about the midseason playoff race. In fact, if we zoom out and look at the divisional standings as a whole, patterns are starting to emerge that show us which eras and which philosophies are truly built for the long haul.
It's time to look at the big picture.
Let's dive into Section 2 and survey the macro-level landscape of the league. We are going to look at the standings division by division to see how these legendary teams are stacking up.
Let's start with the AFC landscape.
When you look at the AFC East, it seems like the narrative we discussed earlier with Miami is really bearing out over the course of the season.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
In the AFC East, the 1984 Miami Dolphins are sitting quite comfortably atop the throne. They are 7-2 on the season, riding a massive 4-game winning streak.
Dominant.
But what really stands out in the data, the true indicator of their dominance, is that Miami is a flawless 4-0 against divisional opponents. They have established total supremacy in their backyard.
You have to remember, divisional games are notoriously difficult because these teams play each other twice. The coaches know the tendencies. The players know the tells.
To be 4-0 means your fundamental scheme is just better than your rivals.
The 99 Colts are right behind them at 6-3. But as we saw in Week 10, Miami holds that head-to-head advantage. It's a massive psychological edge.
It really is.
The 85 Patriots are hanging around at 5-4, followed by the 90 Bills at 5-5 and the 85 Jets at 4-5. The Jets are actually on a 2-game losing streak and seem to be fading fast despite that tough defense we talked about earlier.
The Jets are fading because, as we analyzed, their offense cannot reliably score points. In a league this deep, a great defense can only keep you at 500 if you can't consistently manufacture touchdowns.
Miami being 4-0 in the division is huge. That's how you lock down a playoff spot early and guarantee home field advantage.
Now moving over to the AFC Central.
This division is just a messy, physical bloodbath.
Yeah.
I am looking at these records, and it feels like a war of attrition, where no one actually wants to take control.
It's a grind.
The 86 Cleveland Browns lead the pack at 6-4, but they've lost 2 straight games, including that shocking blowout to Jacksonville we just broke down. What is the texture of this division? Why is it so chaotic?
The AFC Central is fascinating because it is defined by parity and physical cold-weather football. These are teams built from the inside out. Tough offensive lines, bruising running backs, and aggressive linebackers.
Old school AFC North style football.
Because their styles are so similar, they end up beating each other up. Right behind the stumbling Cleveland Browns are the 1988 Cincinnati Bengals, sitting at a very quirky 5-4-1 record.
That single tie is a massive anomaly in the standings and could end up being the definitive deciding factor in wildcard tiebreakers later in December.
A tie in a Super League. That means two legendary teams play to an absolute exhausting standstill.
But beneath them, the division is still wide open. You have the 99 Titans at 4-5, 99 Jaguars at 4-5, both of whom won their Week 10 matchups to stay alive, and then the 95 Steelers at 3-5-1, and the 99 Ravens in the basement at 3-6.
Exactly. With Cleveland stumbling badly and revealing structural flaws in their pass protection, the door is wide open.
Anyone can take it.
If a team like Cincinnati or even Tennessee can string together some physical ground control wins and impose their will on these tired defenses late in the year, they can easily make a run at the division crown.
The AFC Central will not be decided by offensive fireworks. It will be decided by who can run the ball in the snow in December.
It's going to be a slugfest.
I can almost feel the cold weather just looking at these rosters. But out in the AFC West, the picture is much clearer and frankly a lot warmer.
Much warmer.
The 1998 Denver Broncos are absolutely dominating their division. They are 7-2, riding a 2-game win streak, and boast an impressive 4-1 home record at Mile High.
That altitude advantage?
More importantly, they are a perfect 3-0 in their division. Is anyone going to challenge them?
Based on the data, no. The Broncos are playing championship-level football, plain and simple. Their point differential is excellent, scoring 253 points while allowing 219.
We talked about their zone blocking scheme and John Elway's efficiency.
It is a perfectly balanced roster. The only team mathematically hanging around in the West is the 1981 San Diego Chargers at 5-4. But beyond them, the division falls off a cliff into irrelevancy.
Yeah, the 83 LA Raiders are 4-6, the 93 Kansas City Chiefs are 3-6, and the 84 Seattle Seahawks are 3-6. It's a graveyard below the top two.
Unless the Chargers can replicate their massive offensive passing yardage from Week 10 while simultaneously figuring out how to play a shred of functional pass defense, which their roster isn't built to do, Denver has a virtual lock on the AFC West.
Denver's ability to run the football ensures they dictate the clock, which limits the number of possessions a high-flying team like San Diego gets.
It's a structural advantage that guarantees Denver the division.
Okay, we've covered the AFC. Let's pivot to the NFC. And here's where it gets really interesting, specifically the NFC West.
Oh, boy.
I'm just going to call it right now based on these standings.
Oh.
This is the juggernaut division. It is absolutely terrifying to look at the sheer concentration of talent here.
Terrifying is the most accurate word you could use. The 1999 St. Louis Rams lead the division with a 7-2 record, and they are currently riding a massive 6-game winning streak.
They are the hottest team in this simulation, operating at peak efficiency.
But the incredible part is that they cannot breathe easily, not for a single second. Right on their heels, breathing down their necks, are two absolute heavyweights of NFL history.
Who do we have?
The 1998 Atlanta Falcons and the 1984 San Francisco 49ers, both sitting right there at 6-3.
3 teams with 6 or more wins in the same division through 10 weeks. That's mathematically insane. They are hoarding all the wins from the rest of the conference.
It's historically unprecedented.
How are 3 teams with such drastically different philosophies thriving in the exact same ecosystem?
It is a testament to the fact that exceptional execution of any coherent philosophy can yield wins. What's remarkable is analyzing how the Rams are surviving this gauntlet. They rely on the greatest show on turf offensive explosion. They have the highest point differential in this terrifying division, scoring 272 points while allowing 223. They simply outscore their mistakes.
But contrast that with the 98 Falcons.
The Falcons are winning through sheer defensive brutality. They have been incredibly stingy, allowing a division-low 173 points over 10 games. They run Jamal Anderson down your throat and play suffocating defense.
And then you have the 84 49ers right there with them, utilizing Bill Walsh's precision West Coast offense to control the ball via short, high-percentage passes. It's 3 entirely different ways to win football games.
And even the 91 New Orleans Saints, sitting in 4th place at 5-4, have a winning record and a positive point differential. Their dome patrol defense keeps them in every game.
The only team suffering in the NFC West is the 2-7-96 Carolina Panthers. This division is going to violently cannibalize itself in the final stretch of the season.
Every single head-to-head matchup between the Rams, Falcons, and 49ers is going to feel like the NFC Championship game, and they are going to beat each other up physically and emotionally.
I cannot wait to see those box scores as the season winds down. Moving over to the NFC Central, it looks far less chaotic. Seems to be a classic two-horse race.
Much more traditional.
You have the 1998 Minnesota Vikings sitting at 7-2 and the 1996 Green Bay Packers at 7-3. The Packers have a bye-week quirk in their schedule, but they are incredibly hot right now, riding a 4-game win streak. What separates these two from the rest of the pack?
Consistency and high-level quarterback play. The Packers' consistency is incredibly impressive. They are a flawless 4-0 in divisional games, meaning they're systematically dispatching the teams they're supposed to beat within their region.
Brett Favre is operating a dynamic, balanced offense.
The Vikings are also undefeated in the division at 3-0. They feature a vertical passing attack that is simply overwhelming secondaries. Those head-to-head matchups between Minnesota and Green Bay will entirely decide the NFC Central champion.
The rest of the division is just crammed to survive. The 99 Tampa Bay Buccaneers are lingering at 4-5, featuring that famous Tampa 2 defense, but lacking the offensive firepower to climb higher.
The 85 Bears are at 3-6, as we discussed, with their offensive struggles.
And then we return to the tragedy of the 91 Detroit Lions. 0-10. It's a painful reality to look at.
It is the starkest contrast in the simulation. They have scored a league-worst 167 points while surrendering a league-worst 321 points.
To have a player with the transcendent generational talent of Barry Sanders completely neutralized by an inadequate supporting cast in this historical simulation is one of the more fascinating, albeit depressing, subplots of this data.
It proves conclusively that in a league of this caliber, a single superstar running back cannot overcome a porous offensive line, a non-existent passing game, and a historically bad defense.
It's a team sport, and the Lions simply don't have the team to compete here. Let's end our tour of the standings with the NFC East. I'm going to dub this the mediocre division.
That's a fair title.
I mean, absolutely no offense to these legendary franchises, but nobody seems to want to grab the steering wheel and take control here. It's just a cluster of average records.
The data certainly supports your mediocre label, and it exposes a lack of top-tier dominance. The 1995 Dallas Cowboys lead the division, but their record is a very modest 5-4.
They have a razor-thin lead over the 1984 St. Louis Cardinals, who are sitting exactly at 500 with a 5-5 record. Just behind them, you have the 91 Washington team and the 80 Philadelphia Eagles, both lingering at 4-5.
The 86 New York Giants are at the bottom at 3-6, currently suffering through a disastrous 5-game losing streak.
It's a massive traffic jam of 500 teams. Why is a team like the 95 Cowboys, who won the Super Bowl in their actual timeline, struggling so much to separate from a pack of distinctly average teams?
What's concerning for the 95 Cowboys is their absolute inconsistency against different styles of play. They're only 3-2 at home and 2-2 on the road. They aren't dominating anyone.
Why not?
In their native era, their offensive line was historically massive and could physically overpower defensive fronts. But in the Super League, they are facing defensive lines from the late 90s that are just as big and defensive fronts from the 80s that use complex stunts to negate size.
They have lost their primary schematic advantage.
This division is so bunched up that a 2-game winning streak by Washington or Philadelphia could completely flip the standings by week 12.
No one has established the kind of physical or strategic identity required to pull away from the pack. It is simply a war of attrition.
A war of attrition where the survivor might end up with a pretty ugly record.
You know, we've been throwing a lot of team records out there discussing macro philosophies, but let's dive into the individual players who are actually making these records possible.
Let's look at the stats.
It is time for Section 3, looking at the league leaders, the statistical freaks of this golden era league. Let's look at the data from the NFL 101 packet and really make these numbers come alive for you.
Let's start with the passing leaders because this data perfectly encapsulates the volume versus efficiency debate we alluded to earlier when analyzing the Chargers and Broncos game.
Right.
If you look purely at gross passing yards in 1981, Dan Fouts leads the entire league with 2,929 yards through 10 weeks. He is on pace for an astronomical season total that would shatter records.
However, the deeper metrics tell a slightly different story, right?
Exactly. He only completes 61.2% of his passes and has thrown 7 interceptions against 21 touchdowns. His quarterback rating is a solid but not spectacular 98.2.
Right. Fouts is running that Air Coryell system, just sling it downfield in every single play. It generates massive yardage, but it's volatile.
Compare that to 1984, Dan Marino.
Marino is second in overall yards with 27.96, but he leads the entire league in passing touchdowns with 26. He has 26 touchdowns in just 9 games.
That is an absurd scoring rate.
He completes 64.6% of his passes. though he does have 12 interceptions, likely a result of his aggressive vertical passing tree and constantly trying to fit the ball into tight man coverage windows.
But if we are talking pure, unadulterated efficiency, we have to shine a light on a player most casual fans might overlook. Neil Lomax of the 1984 St. Louis Cardinals.
Lomax is quietly putting together an absolute masterpiece of a season. He holds the highest quarterback rating in the entire league at 105.1.
Neil Lomax, outperforming Marino, Manning, and Favre in quarterback rating.
How is he doing it?
By being surgically precise and fiercely protecting the football. He has completed a league-leading 65.5% of his passes for 2,485 yards, 19 touchdowns, and only 4 interceptions.
Only 4 interceptions in 10 weeks.
He is making the right reads, avoiding perilous throws, and meticulously moving the chains while still pushing it down the field when the opportunity presents itself.
Kurt Warner of the 99 Rams is right there as well, with a 101.0 rating, completing 64.3% of his throws for 2,608 yards and 22 touchdowns.
When you analyze this group, a clear pattern emerges.
Tell us.
The late 90s quarterbacks like Warner and 99 Peyton Manning are showing generally higher completion percentages, reflecting the widespread adoption of West Coast offense concepts, which prioritize short, horizontal, high-percentage throws.
While the 80s quarterbacks like Fouts and Marino are dominating the raw yardage and touchdown totals through sheer vertical deep ball volume.
That contrast in offensive philosophy playing out in the stats is just awesome.
But as much as we love the aerial circus and seeing the ball fly 60 yards downfield, you cannot survive the winter months in this league without a punishing ground game. And when we look at the rushing leaders, my goodness, the late 90s running backs are absolutely running the show.
We have to marvel at 1998 Terrell Davis. He is a machine.
Terrell Davis is having a season for the ages, and his numbers validate the entire Denver Broncos roster construction.
In just 9 games, he has already broken the 1,000-yard mark. He has 1,001 rushing yards on 179 carries.
That is an average of 5.6 yards every single time he touches the football, and he leads the league with 14 rushing touchdowns. He is the undisputed focal point of a Denver team that is 7-2.
Averaging 5.6 yards a carry when every single defensive coordinator in the stadium knows you're getting the ball on 1st and 2nd down.
That's superhero stuff. It speaks volumes about his vision and that offensive line's execution. And he's not alone up there. Look at the guys right behind him on the leaderboard. It's a specific archetype of player.
Exactly. The top of the rushing leaderboard is a testament to the massive workhorse backs of the late 90s. Behind Davis, you have 1998 Jamal Anderson of the Falcons with 968 yards and 10 touchdowns.
Then 99 Edgerrin James with 846 yards, and 95 Emmitt Smith with 835 yards and 11 touchdowns.
These are big, physical, 3-down running backs. They're setting the physical tone of the league.
Why are the 90s backs so dominant compared to the 80s backs in this simulation?
It comes down to size and scheme evolution. The late 90s featured running backs who are often 220 to 240 pounds running behind massive offensive lines utilizing zone or power concepts.
They are absorbing contact, wearing down these smaller, quicker 1980s defensive fronts over 4 quarters and controlling the clock.
You do see a few 80s backs hanging around on the fringes of the leaderboard. Joe Morris of the 86 Giants is having a great year with 740 yards, averaging 5.1 a carry, and Freeman McNeil of the 85 Jets is at 722 yards, averaging 5.2.
But the sheer volume of quick carries, the durability to withstand 25 touches a game, and the resulting touchdown totals belong almost exclusively to the late 90s bruisers.
It's ground and pound at its absolute finest.
Now, when those quarterbacks do drop back, who are they throwing to? The receiving leaders provide a really interesting mix of players who revolutionize their respective positions.
The only receiver in the entire simulation to cross the 1,000-yard mark already is 1999 Marvin Harrison. He has 1,008 yards on 75 catches.
He is Peyton Manning's security blanket, his deep threat, and his possession receiver all rolled into one.
Harrison's route running precision is legendary. He didn't rely on overwhelming size. He relied on scientific exactness in his footwork. That precision is clearly translating perfectly across eras, as 80s defensive backs who relied on physical intimidation at the line of scrimmage can't even get their hands on him to jam him.
But what I find truly fascinating is the diversity of the players right behind Harrison on the yardage list. You have an early 80s tight end, 1981 Kellen Winslow, sitting near the very top with 57 catches for 753 yards.
For context, tight ends in the 70s and early 80s were mostly just extra offensive linemen who occasionally caught short passes. Winslow changed all that, right?
Winslow was completely revolutionary. Don Coryell started splitting him out wide away from the offensive line. He basically functioned as a giant wide receiver in a tight end's body.
He was too fast for linebackers to cover and too big for cornerbacks to tackle. This simulation proves how utterly unguardable that concept was, even against modern defenses.
And then speaking of unguardable concepts, you have 1999 Marshall Faulk. Faulk is ridiculous. I am looking at his stats, and he's a running back, but he is acting like a top-tier #1 wide receiver.
He truly is the ultimate offensive chess piece. Faulk has 54 catches for 706 yards, averaging 13.1 yards per reception strictly out of the backfield or lined up in the slot. He is creating absolute mismatch nightmares.
If a team plays a base defense with heavy linebackers to stop the run, Faulk runs an angle route and leaves the linebacker in the dust.
If they bring in smaller defensive backs to cover him, the Rams run the ball down their throats. Defenses haven't figured out how to contain him.
He is right up there competing in receiving yards with pure outside X receivers, like 95 Michael Irvin, who has 691 yards on 50 catches.
It shows that offensive innovation, whether it's the vertical tight end of the early 80s or the dynamic pass-catching running back of the late 90s, will always find a structural weakness in a defense to produce yards.
That is the beauty of football evolution. But as the old saying goes, defense wins championships. Let's give some love to the defensive and special teams standouts who are out there in the trenches trying to stop all these offensive fireworks we just talked about.
On the defensive side of the ball, we have to highlight 1990 Bruce Smith. He is currently leading the league with 12 sacks through 10 weeks. He is an absolute terror off the edge.
What makes Bruce Smith so effective across different eras? Is he just overpowering people?
It's his combination of power, speed, and technique. He didn't just bull rush, he had an arsenal of pass rush moves, the rip, the swim, the spin.
He's utilizing techniques that offensive tackles from the early 80s simply weren't trained to counter on a consistent basis.
Behind him, you have 84 Mark Greer and 98 Lester Archambault with 10 and 9 sacks, respectively. But as any defensive coach will tell you, creating negative plays isn't just about getting sacks, it's about takeaways. Generating extra possessions for your offense is the hidden metric of winning football.
Turnover machines. Who is leading the league in defensive thefts? I love seeing defensive backs reading the quarterback's eyes and jumping routes.
We have a three-way tie at the top for interceptions, and it beautifully spans 3 different decades of defensive backfield play. You have Ray Crockett of the '91 Lions, who is desperately trying to give his winless team a spark and playing incredibly aggressive coverage.
Young McElroy of the '83 Raiders embodying that classic physical Raiders secondary mentality.
And Jimmy Hitchcock of the '98 Vikings. They all have 7 interceptions. Hitchcock has even returned one of his jacks for 62 yards and a touchdown.
In a league with this much passing volume, defensive backs who possess the ball skills to track the ball in the air and the instincts to undercut routes are worth their weight in gold. They are single-handedly altering the win probability of these games.
And we can't forget the guys who actually put points on the board with their legs. We joked about the kicker MVP games earlier, but special teams are a critical third phase of the game.
When these heavyweights clash and the offenses stall out in the red zone, the guys kicking the ball become the most important players on the field.
Absolutely, and the data reflects that perfectly. We must give a massive shout out to Gary Anderson of the 1998 Vikings. He leads all players, not just kickers, all offensive scorers, including Terrell Davis and Marvin Harrison with 99 total points.
He is a flawless, perfect 23 for 23 on field goals from inside 50 yards.
23 for 23, that is automatic.
It is a massive strategic advantage. In an ultra-competitive league where games are routinely decided by a single possession, as we saw with the Rams and Saints or the 49ers and Panthers, having a kicker who is virtually automatic allows a coach to completely change their play calling in the fourth quarter.
You don't have to take risky shots into the end zone. You just need to reach the 30-yard line. Jeff Wilkins of the '99 Rams and Kevin Butler of the '85 Bears are right behind him in points, proving that special teams efficiency often correlates directly with a team's overall success and placement in the divisional standings.
That is fantastic context. All right, we've analyzed the tactical nuances of the games, we've scrutinized the chaotic divisional standings, and we've marveled at the statistical outliers. Now it is time for the fun part.
Time for predictions.
It is time for Section 4. Putting our reputations on the line, we're going to look ahead to the home stretch of the season and make some bold playoff predictions based strictly on the data and trends we have right now. Let's start with the easy ones, the teams that have proven their philosophies work. Who are your absolute sharpened pen playoff locks?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you have to look for teams that combine 3 crucial elements: elite quarterback play, a dominant positive point differential, and total control over their divisional opponents.
Based on that criteria in the AFC, I am locking in the 1984 Miami Dolphins and the 1998 Denver Broncos.
The Dolphins are 7-2 and untouchable 4-0 in their division and have Marino playing at a level that confounds modern defenses. The Broncos are also 7-2, 3-0 in their division and have the most unstoppable rushing force in the league in Terrell Davis, paired with an incredibly efficient John Elway, who minimizes mistakes.
They both have the momentum, the roster depth, and the schematic advantages to secure top seeds and home field advantage. Hard to argue against the two most balanced teams in the AFC. Now, what about the NFC?
In the NFC, the 1998 Minnesota Vikings and the 1999 St. Louis Rams look virtually unstoppable. The Vikings are 7-2, scoring a massive 295 points, the highest offensive output in the entire league. Their vertical passing game is too fast for older defenses.
The Rams are riding a 6-game win streak with the second highest point total at 272, and we saw them prove they can win a gritty game against a historic defense like the 91 Saints. Those four teams are the foundational pillars of the postseason right now.
I cannot argue with any of those selections. They are the class of the league.
But if those are the division winners, I want to pivot and talk about the wild card race, because looking at the standings, I think it's going to be an absolute bloodbath. I want you to pull up the NFC West standings in your mind right now.
It's a scary picture.
How in the world can the 1998 Atlanta Falcons and the 1984 San Francisco 49ers both survive the final 7 weeks? They are both 6-3, but they have to play each other, and they both still have to play the 7-2 Rams within their division. They are going to physically beat each other to a pulp. Is there a scenario where all three make it?
That is the exact mathematical scenario that creates a wildcard bloodbath. My bold prediction is that the NFC wildcard spots will almost entirely come out of just two divisions, the NFC West and the NFC Central.
You have the 96 Packers sitting comfortably at 7-3 in the Central, and you have the 84 49ers and 98 Falcons at 6-3 in the West.
These teams are accumulating so many wins against outside non-divisional opponents that they will mathematically hoard the wildcard berths. And this spells absolute doom for the NFC East.
Wait, how does the strength of the West spell doom for the East?
Because of how the playoff seeding works. Whoever eventually wins the NFC East, whether it's the entirely average 95 Cowboys or the strictly 584 Cardinals, is going to enter the playoffs with a modest record, likely 9-7 or 10-6.
They will be a highly vulnerable, mathematically weak division champion.
By rule, they will host a home playoff game, but they will likely have to host a battle-tested wildcard team from the West or Central, say the 84 49ers or the 96 Packers. That has a significantly better overall record, a superior point differential, and has survived a much tougher schedule.
So you're saying a 10-win or 11-win wildcard 49ers team, hardened by playing the Rams and Falcons all year, might have to travel to play an 8-win division champion Cowboys team that merely survived the mediocre division.
That is going to be amazing television and a prime opportunity for a wildcard team to crush a division winner on the road.
Now, what about the teams on the brink? The squads whose entire seasons are teetering on a knife's edge after Week 10. Who is most in danger of collapsing?
The primary team on the brink for me is the 1986 Cleveland Browns. They are currently leading the AFC Central at 6-4, but the underlying data is flashing bright red warning signs.
They are on a 2-game losing streak, culminating in that absolute 37-14 thrashing by a sub-500 Jacksonville team where their pass protection completely dissolved.
Bernie Kosar is throwing too many interceptions under pressure, and their run game is stalling against heavier defensive fronts. I am issuing a warning to Cleveland right now. If they don't fix their offensive efficiency, adjust their pass protection schemes, and improve their ball security immediately, they are going to fall apart.
The 5-4-1-88 Bengals, or the intensely physical ascending 99 Titans, are going to steal the AFC Central Division crown right out from under them in the cold weather of December.
I completely agree with that assessment. The Browns look incredibly fragile schematically right now.
But let me throw one more scenario at you. Do you think the 1999 Colts, sitting at 6-3, can catch the 1984 Dolphins for the AFC East title? Peyton Manning is having a brilliant statistical season in terms of moving the ball between the 20s. But can they overcome Miami's lead?
It is mathematically possible, but practically looking at how the teams match up, I highly doubt it. Manning is brilliant, yes, but look at the context of their Week 10 collision.
Marino didn't just beat the Colts. He analytically dismantled their entire defensive philosophy, winning 31-9. He threw 4 touchdowns to Manning's 0.
Miami is undefeated in the division. That head-to-head dominance in Week 10 might have permanently sealed the psychological and tactical battle for the AFC East. The Colts are a very good team, but the Dolphins proved decisively that they are the apex predators in that division.
I predict the Colts will have to settle for a wild card spot, hit the road in the playoffs, and pray they don't draw Miami in the first round again.
It's a tough road ahead for them.
So what does this all mean? We have digested an unbelievable amount of data from this golden era league, looking deeply at standings, box scores, tactical matchups, and statistical anomalies through 10 weeks.
What it shows us is that combining the vertical, sheer aerial circus of the early 1980s offenses with the bruising ground and pound complex zone blitzing defensive mindsets of the late 1990s has created an incredibly unpredictable, wildly thrilling simulation.
You have Dan Fouts throwing for over 400 yards and losing by 2 scores while Terrell Davis rushes for nearly 100 yards and dominates the game clock. It is a true clash of football civilizations, proving there is more than one way to achieve gridiron immortality.
This raises an important question, one that every football fan analyzing this deep dive data needs to ask themselves as we look ahead to the playoffs. As the weather inevitably turns colder for the final stretch of the season, when the snow starts falling in places like Green Bay, Denver, and Cleveland, and the wind starts howling in outdoor stadiums, what will matter more?
That's the real test.
Will the sheer, unbridled passing volume of the early 80s quarterbacks like Marino, Fouts, and Lomax carry the day slicing through the freezing wind? Or will the bruising cold weather 1,000-yard rushing attacks of the late 90s running backs like Davis Anderson and James become the ultimate undeniable trump card? When the playoffs finally arrive, you really have to wonder which fundamental offensive philosophy actually stands the test of time and delivers a championship under the harshest conditions.
That is the ultimate question. The reason the simulation is so captivating, and the answer is going to unfold over these next 7 weeks of simulated action. I want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive. The data is incredibly rich, the historical matchups are legendary, and the playoff race is truly just getting started. Keep your eyes locked on these divisional standings, because as the season races toward the postseason, every single yard, every tactical adjustment, and every single kick is going to matter immensely. We will catch you next time as we continue to track the greatest hypothetical league ever assembled.